Welcome to the Jon Corbin Podcast. My name is Jon Corbin. This is a show of meaningful conversations where I sit down with artists, thinkers, and interesting people to tell stories on the themes of creativity, inspiration, community, and learning together. You can find out more about the podcast at my website, joncorbinmusic.com, and you can find me on social media. My Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram handles are at Jon Corbin Music. That's JONCORBIN. That's right, there is no H. Finally, we are Patreon supported. You can find out more at patreon.com/Jon Corbin. Your Patreon support is greatly appreciated. It not only allows the show to keep running, but allows it to reach for higher levels. If you want to provide monthly support, there are no tiers. You can just pay what you choose, and that gives you access to bonus material around the podcast, but also exclusive creative work like new songs, poems, essays, and a whole lot more. It's the Jon Corbin Podcast. I am Jon Corbin, here with my special guest. Who are you?
Hey, I'm Chad Cecil. I'm a dad to two little girls, Julie and Margot. I'm a husband to Jen, the lovely Jen. I'm a singer-songwriter, and I live in Ottawa, known as the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. Yeah, that's me.
Welcome, Chad. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, John. I'm so happy to be here, man.
Chad, what do you do?
What do I do, man? For work, I work for a church called St. Albans Church here in Ottawa. I'm the young adult pastor and music director. Yeah, so I have the opportunity to work with that community, with that spiritual community. And then, first and foremost, I think I'm a husband and I'm a parent, trying to figure this thing out. So, and I write some music. That about sums it up. Try to be a good friend right now to the people in my life, and trying to keep my wits about me right now. So
yeah, in a crazy season for sure.
No kidding, man.
Chad, who do you hold close?
I hold my kids close, man. I mean, goodness gracious. This past year has been interesting on so many levels, but, I think I can't imagine it without them. So my two little girls, I hold super close. They bring me life, bring me so much joy, bring me so much happiness, exhaust me to no end, but at the same time, I can't imagine it any differently. So they're who I hold close for sure. Yeah.
There's a lot of giving in parenting.
Yeah.
More than they tell you.
It's true, man. There's, they tell you about sleep. They warn you about the lack of sleep, but they don't tell you how much sleep plays into everything else. So yeah, man, a lot of giving for sure.
I was at a show in what may have been 2019, and I was talking to one of the artists there. I was DJing for the night, and they were saying, the number one indicator or like trait for people that are resilient is sleep. And this person said this, and I'm like, they're not an artist, or they're not a parent.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, yeah, thanks for telling me that. Like,
right.
that's not happening.
I know. I feel it. Yeah, definitely, man. Rest, I mean, I tried to lie my head down today. I tried to squeeze in a nap, but like, I couldn't do it. Like, my body was like, I was so tired, but I just couldn't wind down quick enough to sleep. And then you get thinking about sleep, and then you can't sleep.
You can't do it.
And then by that time the kids are ready to go again. So you're like, shoot.
And you have young ones, right? Like mine are 6 and up, but you guys are younger than that. So
yeah, 2.5 and just turned 1 year.
Man.
So yes, yeah, they need us.
Yeah,
Uh, but yeah, man, we're holding out one day at a time. Uh, that's all you can do. So
that's it. All right, Chad, what inspires you?
getting outside, man. Being outside, being in nature, breathing in the fresh air. I mean, we're all cooped up, So for me, to be honest, getting outside and just taking in my surroundings, trying to connect with nature, trying to be attentive and observe the land, nature around me, to listen, to feel, to reach my hands out. Like today, my daughter and I went out and picked some cedar branches, and I was trying to explain to her the difference between cedar and pine. For a 2.5 year
Mhm.
old, I was
Two and a
trying to
half.
tell the difference between cedar and pine, and we weren't really getting it, but for me, being out there and having feeling the energy, and it's tactile, it's a lot, it's
Okay,
alive. Uh, the land is active, and it's giving, and it's receiving all the time. And so I think being outside inspires me, and observing other people and how they're interacting with one another, as well as just hearing stories of people's their own ways of being true to themselves. Yeah, those kind of things inspire me. So yeah, but right now I think it's mainly getting outside and uh, breathing in the fresh air, and allowing that to kind of form me.
that's big. That's really big.
Yeah.
Chad, describe yourself in one word.
uh, right now, yeah, I'm going to use a word that's probably summed up the last couple years for me. Um, but I would say reclaiming.
Yeah.
Yeah, reclaiming. And I don't know if you want me to talk any more about that, but
Sure. Unpack it, man. Let's go.
yeah, I mean, reclaiming is this idea of taking back, or bringing back something to its original place, or this idea of restoration. And I identify as Native, um, and I didn't grow up immersed in Native culture. I didn't know. I wasn't really connected to our Cherokee heritage. I grew up very much immersed in a very loving community, but a very um, white-bodied community, and
Okay.
one that didn't think Native people were really here, and didn't
Right.
really had no concept of it. Their understanding of Native people was your general stereotypes, right? That you see in a lot of sports teams. Shout out to the Super Bowl yesterday with the Chiefs. Um, yeah, the last couple of years have been with a serious convergence of I think things that have happened to me personally, as well as some cultural reckonings, as well as having kids. You kind of all these things kind of came together where I was like, what's the story that I'm passing along to my kids about who
Yeah.
they are, who I am, where we come from. So that's kind of come with a lot of unpacking, a lot of embodiment, doing a lot of work, doing things that that are intuitive to me. But growing up, I would have had no construct or context for this stuff. And so now, as an adult, when you can really start kind of taking ownership of who you are as a person and what you're about, yeah, these last couple of years have been real reclaiming of my heritage and what it means to be Native. And so I'm figuring that out. It comes with a lot of grief. It comes with
Yeah.
a lot of anger, from what I wasn't given, for what we weren't given, and the continued sort of erasure that happens with Indigenous people, with Native people. And so, yeah, I'm tackling that own sense of erasure in my own spirit, in my own body, consistently. So, yeah, man. So reclaiming, that's my word. There's a lot there. There's a lot I feel
Yeah,
there. Even talking about it is like, it feels natural, but it also feels wild to me to kind of be
sure.
in this spot. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I really want to honor you sharing that and sharing that with me and with us. Like that's yeah. You talked about people's stories being inspiring, and I think you're walking right down that path of finding your story and being willing to share it. I want to honor that. Yeah, we're gonna get into that today. I think when it comes to my story, I have some observations and some questions of our time knowing each other,
Mhm.
because I think that uh, my brain struggles to register time. Like once I know you, I know you. I don't remember like what was the date that we met. I remember stories. That's kind of why I wanted to do this show. It's just to be able to tell stories. But I sort of watched you walk through some of that, um, and I think it's a valuable story for people as well. So I ask people to describe themselves in a word, and then I say, "Do you want to know how I describe you to other people?"
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm curious, man. And how often you're describing me to other
Yeah.
people.
How much does Chad come up? Well, I tell stories. We've done some stuff. Uh, Chad Cecil's honest.
Hmm.
Like I don't know if there's I need a better word than brutally honest, because that's not, because it's the wrong like you you are honest about your journey in a way that I find sharpening and honoring and intriguing and affecting and educational or educating. I don't know if that's right. Educational. Like you willing to share your opinion gives me pause, makes me think, makes me measure that against myself, against my own instinctual reactions. I'm watching you from a distance because we've been in the same room just a handful of times. We text and connect phone calls when we can. We've known each other only for a couple of years, but I'm watching you share, and I go, if I need to tell someone about who Chad is, I'm going to say singer-songwriter, and I'm going to say incredibly honest.
Hmm.
Incredibly honest. Now, this wasn't on my radar today, but I watched you unfold a song called "We're Not Okay"
Yeah.
to a
Yeah.
Christian audience in Hamilton in, oh boy, the fall of 2019.
Yeah, 2019, man. It feels like 10 years ago now.
Doesn't it though?
Yeah,
I
it
can't
really
even
does.
frame those things.
Yeah.
Like I remember hearing the demo because I was supposed to be a part of the band. It didn't work out. I remember hearing the demo, and it was in amongst a bunch of demos. And then when you finally sit with it and you go, "We're going to take this into a Christian space," and
Right.
say, we're not doing that great. That's bravery. It's honesty, and it's bravery being willing to share that. And so yeah, if your name comes up, I'm like, yo, this guy is living an authentic life. And I would love it if there was some kind of like photo book of the selfies that you've been taking over the last 2 years, because you
Yeah, I think
post
it's
them
what
on
Facebook
social.
is. Yeah, yeah.
Your Facebook in general,
Yeah.
like you post them, and it's just all on your face.
Mm,
And
interesting.
yeah, like for better or for worse. And I remember I had a friend, I call him a big brother in music, who's like, years ago we were talking on the phone. He's like, yeah, I want my next album the cover to be just me crying.
Wow. Okay. That's honest.
Exactly. And it was like, oh wow, that's really bold. Who's gonna do that?
Right.
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 And I'm like,
Right. For real.
and when I see you
Hmm.
and I see those selfies, I'm like, it's all there. It's good, it's bad, it's pain, it's joy, it's all there. And I just am so thankful that you're willing to bear that. So that's what I say about you.
Thanks, man. My grandmother used to say, I know exactly where you're at when I just look at your eyes.
Interesting.
And she used to say that to me all the time. And I'd be like, oh, shoot. Like, well, I just got to walk around my eyes closed then. Cause, you know, but that's interesting you say honest, man. I think, I don't know. Cause I feel, I don't know. I feel like sometimes when you describe people who are honest, I may be the person who hears that, like for myself, like, even when I wrote that song, like I'm trying to articulate things that I'm feeling.
Hmm.
And it's like, I don't know any other way, like any other way of like, not for me, not being honest. It ain't going to work. But I think it's interesting for you when you say selfies and see photos that, cause the face tells a story, right? Yeah. So I appreciate you telling that to me, man.
That's interesting that your reaction with your grandma
Yeah.
we're kind of, I think I was like, I recognize my reaction in yours where you're like, I gotta walk around with my eyes closed. Don't see me.
Right.
Don't see right through me.
Right. For sure.
Where's my guard? Where's my protection?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's an insightful question, man. I mean, I think there's an element of, we want to put up some borders. We want some boundaries with people. But there's also a safety, right? Of course, in being known, we want to be known. We want to feel like we
Yeah.
can be honest with people. Yeah. So, but when it comes to art, when it comes to creating, yeah, I don't think there's any other way. Like you telling me about your friend who wants to have an album cover with him crying. I'm like, well, you know what you're getting. You know what I mean? There's no,
Yeah.
if you're in the mood, and hopefully his music will make you cry. Because if it doesn't, that might be awkward. But at least you know what you're signing up. At least you know what you're signing up for. So
Yeah. It's funny how you said like we want boundaries but then you and I walk around being like really honest with people.
right.
It's really interesting. Is there musicians or music that bears it like that you really enjoy?
Yeah, there's an indigenous artist that I've been getting into of late. She's a she's a poet, she's a writer, speaker. Her name's Leanne Simpson. Um, and yeah,
Okay.
she tells Canadian. She tells the story of Anishinaabe people, like, and just lays it all out. Like there's no, she's not playing nice, and it's poetic, and it's like,
Yeah.
and it can be jarring. Of course, I love listening to Kendrick as well, right?
Oh
I
my
don't think
gosh.
Kendrick really holds back.
To the point where I can't listen to it
Right. I'm
sometimes.
like, oh, okay, right, right. Yep. Uh,
Yeah. The song You,
right,
where he's drunk talking to himself in the mirror. Oh, it just cuts so deep.
right. Like, I don't know. If I'm just to kind of like reflect on him as an artist, which is this is not it's not fair because I'm just kind of coming up with it on a whim, but like to be that honest and to be that like direct and forward, like that's, and I've only written I mean I am I have not written that many songs, but every song he gives, it just feels like he's just laying it all out. And
Hmm.
I know how exhausting that is for like one song, to pour over one line, right? To try to
Yeah.
figure out the right words that feel true, that feel right, but also fit syllabically, and also fit the rhythm, the cadence, but for him to do that uh, time and time again, that's just a lot. He must be getting some sleep, man. he's got he's got to get sleep.
Because he's so exhausted. He's putting in the work. Is that
Yeah,
what you
but
mean?
also like
Yeah.
to put in the work, you got to have sleep, right? Like to give it all the time. I also feel like you got to operate from a place of rest. You know, I don't know. It's kind of back and forth. It feels like.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I think he's the stories that he's been telling have been distanced enough from his life, not only in
Mm,
like providing characterization, Kung Fu Kenny on the Damn record
Mm.
is him exaggerated, but it's also sort of distance when he starts to tell the age of the character, where he's able to what's the song Fear on the Damn record, where
Mm.
it's like I think he's 7, 17, and 27 or something like that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And so he's able to look back with some distance,
Yes.
and frame that and then put it into a story. It's yeah. There's a lot I connect with. I think a
Right.
lot when I listen to him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how he evolves in his interaction with his writing, or how his voice maybe changes, or just, yeah, it gets different, right? As he gets older, right? So, but yeah, he's a legend already.
That's yeah. Just mentioning that inspires me. I think that's really dope. I
Yeah,
think that's really
most
dope.
definitely, man. Most
Yeah.
definitely.
I ask the guests because I often forget. Like we said, what is time? Do you remember where or how we met?
Yes, I do remember how we met, and I do remember where we met. You were looking for a guitarist for a show you were doing in Ottawa, correct?
Right. I was coming into town. I wanted to do a show. I decided to book it myself.
Amazing.
Found a cafe. I found an artist. I found a local artist. I think maybe our mutual friend Drew Brown and past podcast guest Drew
Yes.
Brown
Shout
put
out.
me on to Amy Desjardins,
Yep.
and she gave me your name.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't know that. Wow, that's really kind. Yeah. Well, here we are. Yeah. So, you were looking for someone to accompany you to support your tunes. I never played guitar for a hip hop artist, so I mean, it
Hmm.
was kind of a dream come true. Like, I don't know if I expressed that to you.
No.
Even, yeah, I mean, you know, I'm definitely more of a folk player. Like, that's more my
Yes.
my vibe. But so playing hip hop is like, man, I love hip hop. Like, that's my first love. Shout out to my brother Jared for raising me right.
Woo.
But yeah, I mean, playing it is very different.
Yeah.
And playing acoustic with it is very different. You got to have the chops, you got to have the feel. Anyway, so yeah, I volunteered myself. You came over, man. You came over to my house.
Yeah.
Pre-pandemic days, we just had a kid. I was grieving, or I was lamenting to you about how hard it is to have one kid, and then you were like, "Yeah, I have five."
And they're all at home with my wife and my mom and my in-laws.
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
we practiced in my living room. I think my oldest was upstairs sleeping, and then, but you were like, I was like, "How do you do it with five?" You're like, "I'm just starting to write again. I feel like I died, and now I'm just coming back to
Mm,
life." I remember you saying all that stuff and how much
yeah.
it stuck with me so much. So, yeah, that was kind of our introduction, man. It was a convergence of a lot of feelings.
A lot. Yeah. The two of us and a lot of feelings.
It wasn't a lot of feelings, man.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember. I think it was February 2018. That's going to be my guess.
It was cold. There
Um,
was snow.
Yeah.
What else? What else is there?
I'm like looking through my phone right now to see if I can find a picture from that time.
Oh, wow.
Because I think I was either the June before or like June 2017. I visited Ottawa for the first time. Um, and my wife was doing something with work, and I was able to just I had a personal day from my teaching job, and so I arranged to go out on like fly out on a Sunday with her. She was going to do her thing on Monday, and I would just tour the city. Um, Another mutual friend of ours, shout out to Bryce Diamond.
Mm,
We went to
nice.
high school together,
Yeah.
and so we had some connection some connection and reconnection,
Mm-hmm.
uh, digitally or like over social media. And so then when I was in town, I was like, yeah, let's try and try and connect. And so that was cool to like to reconnect with him, and I don't know, I just caught a spark for the city.
Yeah, definitely, man.
Yeah, and so I'm trying to think like that weekend I booked. Oh, you know what? Urban Legends, the poetry
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
collective, yeah, and competition. Like the I knew a guy that ran that group, and so he had me out as a feature. And so I decided, well, if I'm going to go there, then why don't I try and see if I can put the rest of the weekend together? Because that's what I love to do. I'm not like a huge guy for the road.
Are you not bringing your 5 kids on the road, man?
Certainly not.
In your RV?
Traveling with them would be fun. Like when
Right,
they're older, I want to do that. Marrying like the music and the sort of zone that you want to get in and stay in.
right,
Um,
right.
but yeah, I remember when I was in third year university, so like 2003, I had some people in the industry that were mentoring me, and they said we're going on a trip. It's got to be, it was for GMA, for the Gospel Music Association week in Nashville.
Oh yeah.
And so we drove down, stayed in crummy places and ate awful food and went to the parties and the showcases and all that stuff. And then on the way home, we stopped in Detroit to a church, and they were doing concerts and ministry. And I traveled with a couple of artists, and I was just holding the bags. And that week exhausted me.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that I had sleep apnea at the time.
Okay.
So I'm just like so they're getting some sleep. I'm getting no sleep.
God.
And I just don't know how to navigate the road. And so I go, well, I can't do that. Like the most I can do is travel to a city or a place and just do a bunch of shows in 2 or 3 days and then go home. And that'll be filling enough. So that my phone here says February 2019. That's what it says. And that was like a test for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can I go and just like enjoy the city and see what I can do?
Yeah, most definitely, man.
So yeah, so the Saturday of that weekend, the show is that night. We get together that day, meet for the first time, play the tunes for the first time, and just trust. And that's how I felt.
I've been in a lot of moments like that where, not in the genre that we were playing in that night, where you're just like, okay, well, it's we've done what we can do to this point. Let's just see what magic happens.
Yeah.
That's a terrifying place, to be honest. I mean, that's a thrilling place. It's also terrifying because you kind of feel like you're representing yourself. You're also representing, like, these are your songs, these are your babies. Like, so you want to do them justice as well. So I find that a really interesting place to be, and also like a very humbling place to be, because like you've given me your consent to like take these songs and like, for me to folkify them, right, in a way,
Yeah.
right, and you try to do your thing over them. So yeah, so I had a lot of respect for you that night, and how free flowing you were with it as well.
Oh,
So
word. Yeah, like you sharing your perspective like just takes me back to that time, and I don't know, I just feel a lot of peace about it. One of my records to say when I'm playing, I feel so free. And it's even like you said, it is terrifying. It's just, to me, it's fun. Like I'm just like, yeah, let's try it. I mean, maybe it's the MC ethic. Like if you're rapping and you screw up the words, then you make up some new ones, right? Like you
right,
you just
right.
roll with it. But I've wanted to do that folk rap. I mean, I still haven't done it the way I want to.
Hmm.
Um, but that Lauryn Hill unplugged record,
Right.
and I'm just like, oh, you can do this.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Let's do something like it, man. Give me just a little more than a day practice at my house, but come up with something.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah,
That sounds like
that'd
fun.
be really fun to collaborate on. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I sent you some demos, and then we just kind of figured it out. And I don't know if I'll ever be in a jam band, but there was that kind of energy where. And so here's the unique thing about that show. It wasn't just like we did a set and then Amy did a set. We decided to like songwriter circle it. So we were on stage the entire time.
Yeah.
Uh, Two sets. Like we would play a song and then Amy would do a song, and back and forth we went.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And really interesting vibes, man.
yeah.
For me, just reflecting on it, because like you and Amy are very different artists.
We are.
And yeah, it's just a very different perspective. And then in the context of a cafe, this very intimate, which lend itself a little bit more to like, I feel like what Amy was doing, while at the same time, like, I felt like what you were saying brought a freshness to the space that was really helpful and invigorating for a lot of people that night, including myself. So, you normally go into a cafe like that expecting to hear really chill folk, breathy stuff.
Yeah.
But when you go in there and you get a spoken word artist up there, hip hop artists doing your thing, I thought it was cool, man. So, and I appreciated working with you in that.
Doing like Bob Marley covers with like hip rap verses in between, and that was a fun set.
Yeah, yeah.
So one of my lasting memories is it might be our last song, or near the end we did "You Care." I know that you care for me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we do the song. It's not a long song. Like the recorded version's about 2 minutes and 40 seconds, something like that. And I don't think we were much longer, but we sing the chorus 4 times, and they caught it the 4th time.
Yeah.
And so they're singing it, and they get it in a way that's noticeable, and then the song ends, right? You care, and we're all sitting there, and you just go, I don't think we're done singing the song, Jon. And then you just keep going and get them in a rousing chorus, and they're clapping. It's like, there might as well have been stomp clapping. Like it was just like it was the loudest that place had been for the night, and you were the one like, no, we're not done.
I guess I was feeling it, man. I had totally forgotten about that, actually.
That's just that intuition. I was like, oh, this is really impressive.
Yeah.
Because like this is not your show, and
That's
the
true.
the humbling part that you talk about is like we had gone through a bunch of different iterations. I think maybe at some point you were going to present some of your tunes. I don't think you did.
No, I didn't. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, how lovely, like from my perspective, how lovely that you would just give your time. Like you're a singer-songwriter in the city. There's somebody on stage with you presenting their own stuff, and you decide like, I'm just gonna come alongside this dude. It's a totally, random and new connection. But you're like, I was really honored that you, that you put yourself into the show the way that you did, for somebody else. That's I could rock with that any day.
Respect, man. Well, yeah, I'd want someone to do that for me. So it makes sense, man. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what was getting into me that night at the end of that song, but I'm happy that it brought some inspiration to the room. And I'm glad that you look back at it with fondness, man.
And incredible fondness, just deep fondness.
Yeah.
And that's a lasting memory for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Something I'm glad to tell. I ask my guests here to bring a story about something that deals with either something we've collaborated on, or create or around the themes of the show. It's creativity, inspiration, community, or learning. What did you bring for us today, Chad?
Yeah, I'll share like a recent experience I had. Yeah, for Christmas, I've been kind of out of songwriting, to be honest, like this last year. I just haven't really felt like I much space to kind of sit down and come up with words or really feel things. But I had a mutual friend, Rose Ingrid. Shout out to Rose Ingrid,
Shout out to Rose Ingrid.
great poet, spoken word artist, good friend. She connected me with a lady who like just discovered some of her dad's poems. He had
Wow.
written he had written like 50 years ago. For Christmas, she wanted to turn them into songs, and so Rose Ingrid passed this individual's name along to me, and I took a look at the poems, and one of them was a full page long, but I'm not talking like, I'm not talking large font. I'm talking like 4.5 font on a full
Hmm.
page of printer paper of just of words, right, all the way down, and like different words, not like repeating phrases. And then another one was a bit shorter, um, and so I just read these poems, and I was like, okay, like kind of like what sticks out, like what feels good, like what could naturally become a chorus, what could naturally be a verse. The long one was actually the one that resonated with me the most. Yeah, so I had basically she wanted to present it to her dad at Christmas time, so I basically had like a 2 month deadline to write a song, like put these words to music. And man, it was the most creatively challenging thing of my life.
Wow. What was challenging about it for you?
Well, number one, when you and this is, I mean, this has happened many times, but when you get like a melody in your head, or like you get an idea in your head around like some words, and it feels good in the moment, and then you sing it over and over again, and you're like, wait a second, this doesn't feel as good as it did the first time, and it starts to really lose that magic. And then you try to
Hmm.
like, I'm going to try to erase that from my brain, and I'm going to try to approach this song in a fresh way again. Well, that really wasn't happening for me.
Right.
Partly because there were so many lyrics. I think I was just overwhelmed with the amount of music and content that I was going to have to produce uh, to make this poem into something. Yeah, so it was challenging. I probably did, there was probably 40 different voice memos on my phone, like with this poem, just trying to get a consistent melody. Bridges turn into verses, verses turn into choruses. Like it was just all, I, I reached out to the gal multiple times saying, can I amend this? Can I like, what kind of liberties can I take with wording,
Hmm.
with phrasing? And she was really cool about it. Ended up being about a 4.5 minute song, pretty like Leonard Cohen style, a lot of arpeggiated, a lot of picking, uses some different tunings on it, and they loved the song. And she ended up sharing it with her family, and they loved it, and the dad loved it, and it was definitely a labor of love for me, man.
Hmm.
It was definitely a labor of love. Because I just thought it was a beautiful gesture, like of this daughter to want to give this, her dad's poems to him in song. And he was like a big Joni Mitchell fan and big Leonard Cohen fans. And I didn't know that. And then I sent it to her, and she was like, oh my God, this, like, he's going to love this because it feels like right up his alley, like what he loves to listen to anyway. So, um,
Wow.
yeah, so that was that was quite the experience, man. I had a lot of inner turmoil about it, a lot of pacing,
Yeah.
a lot of singing in different parts of the house, singing to my children, them looking at me like, "What the heck are you doing, Dad?" And all the while, just this song just kind of consumed me for a week. Because us, a lot of us artists, we wait to the last minute to try to produce stuff. So that also happened with me, and I just realized that I had bitten off more than I could chew.
That's a really great story. You know, having the source material sometimes can be a good starter, but like that inner turmoil, like, what was your thought process like as you were engaging the work? What was the inner dialogue for you when you decided to take this on?
Well, I think the challenging part with receiving other people's words is like this is a surprise. So like ideally I would have like s- connected with her dad and said, can you give me the context of like where did this poem
Mm,
come from? Because like I was trying to gather it and I could to a degree, but there's also like a lot of interpretation that needs to happen. And also, so for me, like when I write, it's mostly the lyrics and the music kind of come together rather quickly. And it's very like bam, it just kind of happens. It's really
right.
intense. It's really intense for me. It's usually not a drawn out process. And I know it's different for everybody. And I know it's probably going to change for me too. But it was hard for me to connect with the words because and he also wrote them when he was young. And so I was also trying to just feel this guy out. Like, where's he coming from?
Hmm.
Like, what's the idea here? So I think that was a lot of my thought process was just trying to feel the words. But you're also trying to make music that feels true to the words on the page. And so that was a real I think that was the real challenge was for me. All right, I just got to immerse myself in somebody else's experience. Um, and that can be hard when maybe you don't resonate with what's on the page, but you got to help yourself. You got to help yourself with that.
Hmm.
And you almost have to set your like in a way you kind of have to set your own like well, I'm just not feeling this aside. And you're like, I just got to work
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I got to produce something. And that was a challenge for me because I think, I always just want to feel exactly what I'm writing all the time. But like
Yeah.
at the same time, I was hired to do this. So, all right, I got to produce. So that was hard.
It's like that honesty and that authentic nature. It's like, no, this is instinctually how I write, and it's got to come from the gut. It's got to come from the heart. And so, if I can't connect with it, then how am I supposed to produce? And the thing is, like, they're probably hiring you because of the thing,
Right. Exactly.
right?
Do
Yeah.
you want me to write you a song? Like I could write you a song. Uh, um, you know, I mean, I was very honest with her, with the client in the messaging. I was like, "Listen, I got to be honest with you. Like, this is kicking my butt right now." And she was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm sure we'll love it. It'll be great. We're really easy. We're really easy to please." And I'm like, "Okay," but I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, "Oh my God, you don't understand. Like, this is tearing me up." Um, your dad's sweet little poem from 50 years ago is eating me alive. So.
It's so interesting because I think that like that seems like the perfect response for what you needed, but it offers no relief, right?
Oh no,
Like
none, none.
there's no give there to be like, well, if you want to change this or find any way out of it. No, there's no way out of it. This is the hard thing. And we think you're great for it. And you're like, I don't know if I'm good for it.
Right, right.
Yeah.
No, like even like Rose Ingrid, because she knows this gal. She was like, I heard that the song was amazing. Like I heard it went off, and she was like, I kind of want to hear it now. I'm like, no, 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 you don't need to hear it. Like I was proud for doing the work. Like I was proud of myself for doing the work, and I think that's something like I'm proud of myself for doing that.
Hmm.
But I'm also like, it didn't feel like me in a way.
Right.
And so I'm not just gonna like freely share this song, which is just it's kind of an interesting place to be in. But I know I'm not alone. I know a lot of people feel that way about songwriting in a lot of ways. So
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah. It's one of the reasons I hold this space. Like I had my buddy Mark on, and we talked about a song that we have tried to work on for years and have not found a home for it.
right.
It's the pursuit, a creative pursuit that is enticing and maddening and frustrating, and it's really cool that you were able to sort of wrestle this one to the ground. Uh, and then now it's like, okay, well, what lessons can you take from it? What tools can you add to your tool belt to help you keep writing songs?
Yeah, definitely. I did ask for her like consent to, could I tweak things, and I end up skipping like a phrase because I just when I tried to like fit it into like my cadence, it just like there's words that like in songwriting, like specifically with folk, that like I feel like some words just aren't meant to go in the
Sure.
music. Like there's too many syllables here, or like it's really fumbly, and I can't just change this guy's words.
Yeah.
I can't just find the right synonym and be happy with that, because that's what I want to do. It's like, all right, I got to roll with this word. Yeah, I had to grow up, and I had to be an adult and work.
Yo,
So
I had to grow up.
yeah.
That's so interesting. I just wrote. I've been really, unfortunately for the collaborators, been really struggling to send to them a song that we've been working on, where it was based around an artist who I still have to pitch. So I don't know if they'll ever, like, I hope it sees, it's a good song, but it started with his verse and it was a story. And that telling stories from others' perspectives is not an easy thing for me. It can be done in hip hop, it can be done in folk, but like you said, I think you and I, like, honest, we want it to come from our authentic experience. And so I built a beat around it. Like, I worked with people to build a beat around the song, and then I'm like, okay, well, where do I go from here? Because he's already telling the story about somebody, and so I decided to tell a story from that's connected to somebody I know. And I think I did a good job, but even then, I still had to work with my guys in Lost and Found. We had a little bit of a writing session where we could sort of sit and bring our head scratchers to the table, and they helped push me forward. So even then, like, it's hard to it's hard to tell someone else's story. And I think when it's all said and done, I think I might scrap it and tell one of mine. But again, my Lost and Found guys, they've pushed me a little bit forward. I might tell my story, but from like a third person perspective. Like, it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
just not. Yeah, it's just the growing up makes a lot of sense, especially when you're sort of contracted to do it. I want to be a versatile songwriter,
hmm
but I guess there's just some things that you have to fight for a little bit more.
It's kind of this sort of first love mentality you kind of have. Like when like if something sticks, right, and it felt really good, it felt like magic in the moment, I feel like that's kind of worth returning to. And then there's some stuff that's like, you know what, that was kind of cool. I was kind of feeling it, but like there's just not much substance, and kind of distinguishing between those. Like I've got hundreds of voice memos on my phone, and I'll return to some every now and then and just go, actually, that's cool, And then I've got other things I'm like, that's, that's lived on my phone for way too long. So yeah, knowing when to walk away, knowing when to return, knowing just like, there's stories of, writers worked on stuff for 5-10 years, right? And I think your point about trying to tell other people's stories is really interesting, because I kind of view songwriting already in that lens. Is like I'm trying to articulate what I think I'm experiencing, but
Okay.
a lot of the time I don't even feel like it's true to me in a way. I'm trying to give voice to an experience, and if the words hit, I'm like, if they're the right words or the music feels right, I'm like, you know what, that feels really true. But not to get all existential, but I kind of feel like in some way we're always trying to articulate someone else's story until it really comes home to us. Until like
Yeah.
songs I've written, I'm like return, like even when I wrote We're Not Okay, in the moment I was like, okay, this feels really right, really true to me. And then I just had people reach out to me this year and going, man, I feel like you wrote it for this year or this past year, 2020. And I'm like, okay, I didn't, but yes. And yeah, so it's just it's an interesting, songwriting. What a world. Because yeah, and that's the beauty of it, right? You never can quite get a hand on it. So
Well, this school year, I taught a philosophy class for the first time, so I certainly won't fault anyone for trying to get existential.
right on, man. Absolutely.
I like it. Thanks for telling your story, Chad.
Definitely, man. My pleasure. Thanks for listening.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with my story on the Jon Corbin podcast. We are back on the Jon Corbin podcast. I'm here with my special guest, Chad Cecil. Chad got to tell his story before the break, and now it's my turn. You ready, Chad?
Let's do it, John.
All right. January 20th this year. Inauguration Day.
Right. Yep.
It was a day.
It was a day, man. It was a day.
I can't. I'm still too close to January 6th.
Yeah.
Like we're recording this in early February. Like it's just a month ago, and I'm still like, what the bleep happened?
Right. And it's like, and it's gonna happen again. Like something like that's gonna happen again. I mean, there's a lot of activists out there who have been doing the work and telling us, been forecasting, been preparing people. Ways to prepare. And when it happened, they were like, we told you.
Yeah.
January 6th was just, I don't know how more obvious it gets. In terms of what's been happening for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I carried that into Inauguration Day in nervousness.
Yeah, definitely.
Somewhere on the spectrum between nervousness and fear. I did not know it was going to happen. And we're locked down in Ontario or in the GTA. We were locked down. So like basically since Christmas break, I've had all my kids home doing virtual school. Plus I've been teaching. I'm teaching in virtual school. So like it's just like we are heightened as a family. Like there's just so much going on, and so last May and June, the kind of high profile murders, Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, sort of all like within a window. I was so angry, but we were still home. At that point too, like we were locked down as well, and just that it's so hard to process these emotions around your kids.
And you're trying to be, I think that's part of the, you're parenting yourself, right? Is trying to be attentive to your own emotions and at the same time, like talking to your kids about it. And bringing your kids into your own vulnerabilities, right? Like, I feel like I'm learning that I remember on January 6th, when it all went down, like, I was not surprised, but I remember being just in my body, in my spirit, like very unsettled.
Right.
So my partner, Jen, and I talked about it, and our kid, one of our kids, Julie, was like, she's 2.5, right? She's got big emotions, like feels everything 110% right now anyway. But like, she was very restless and upset a lot. And I just looked at Jen. I'm like, it's because we're restless and upset.
Yeah.
Like she's feeling everything.
Yeah.
And so there's so much, repression of emotions and trying to process these. None of us are in a healthy space. And then this kind of sense of helplessness when it comes to what's happening in the world, because we can't be physically as much there as we want to be. That just further creates aggression and fear and frustration, right?
Yeah, definitely. So you have American heritage.
Yeah, definitely. I'm born and raised in the U.S. of A.
What states did you live in, or yeah, did you live in before you came to
I'm a
Canada?
Michigander from Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah, I loved living in Michigan. Lived in Michigan until I was about 20, and then I spent some time out in Seattle for a couple years out in Washington, and then moved back to Michigan, and now I ended up here in Ottawa. So yeah, but you know, I love the U.S. Sorta. It's complicated. Like if my relationship status was something with the U.S., it would be very complicated.
It's complicated.
It's very complicated. Yeah, it's very complicated. So
Yeah,
and
yeah.
in January 20th, I think was a prime, it was a prime example of that. Um, so
Tell me, yeah. So I was thinking about how I felt, and then I'd love to hear your perspective. So for me, there was palpable relief of having a this sounds so weird to say, a politician be sworn into that office. And it was in the sense like I did not enjoy the last 4 years. I did not enjoy the year before that. I did not enjoy the birther stuff with Obama. I did not enjoy this
mhm.
sort of decade um, of Mr. Trump's emergence onto the scene into politics. And so there is a point where I just was like, okay, well, at least that's not happening. Then you
Right,
have,
right.
yeah. So then you have uh, Kamala Harris
Hmm.
and her sort of her historic entry. And I remember being able, I'm not sure, I think my students were working, and I just like flicked on Twitter and was able to see her get sworn in, and I was like getting emotional.
Oh
And
yeah.
she's and all that means for Black women, for South Asian women, for mixed people like myself. Like I was like, oh, I remember Barack Obama's inauguration, and again, it's not all hero worship with these folks. I try to be level headed,
Right.
but it did mean something.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. I mean, I was crying. Like we treated the 20th like a holiday in our home. Like I brought the little kids table into the living room and we're all watching it. I was also very hesitant with all of us watching it because I'm like, look, if something goes down, like our kids are watching an
Yep.
R-rated movie right now,
Yep.
and so I was nervous in that sense. Uh, but yeah, no, historic day, beautiful day. Yeah, I felt like it was Kamala's day, um,
Hmm.
more than anything, uh, for what she represents, who she represents. I felt like that's what was really beautiful about it.
So I see, again, I'm not on social media a ton, but I see like uh, big displays of emotion from people, of just relief. If they didn't like Mr. Trump, then they were over the moon that this change was occurring. And social media is the place for hyperbole. You spend time on Twitter,
Hmm.
and so do I. And so it's interesting for me to sort of, as I'm conceiving tweets, thinking about the language that pops into my head is of the conventions of Twitter. And it's like, well, this is not how I talk. I'm not a very hyperbolic person. So I'm always sort of checking myself, but I'm seeing these like massive displays of relief, and I exhale because nothing's going on, and it's just really incredible to see the symbolic place that Kamala Harris holds. Right?
Hmm.
Does
Hmm.
So then J Lo gets up,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking, okay, I have not been paying attention. I don't know anything about the day. I missed Amanda Gorman.
Oh man.
Um,
Oh yeah. Let's like I the day was her, right? I mean, the day was Kamala and Amanda Gorman for sure, for sure.
yeah.
Right.
What like
Yeah.
the 22?
Hmm.
And this, I'm turning 40 this year, and you start to think, what have I done? You know what I haven't done is deliver a fantastic poem, a 6-minute poem at
At
inauguration.
inauguration day. You got time. You got time,
I
John.
got time. We all run our own race.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
yeah, that was, and then as a teacher, because there's so much, like I halted my classes January 7th and said, listen, and then and continued to do so where I could. But as a teacher, I'm in teacher mode really heavy this year, and it's like, oh man, it's so. I just love to be able to put a dark skinned black woman in
Mm.
front of my students and say, learn.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. Let's give it up
We
for
need more
Amanda Gorman.
teachers. We need more teachers like you, John.
Oh, bro,
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
that's a whole other
That's a whole nother,
podcast.
that's a whole nother thing. Yeah, I know. I know. Mad appreciation for you, John, what you're doing, man.
Oh,
So showing up every day.
thanks. So J Lo gets up.
Mhm.
I'm not. I mean, there's I don't know how to say this. Like with hip hop, I'm ahead, and I want to learn the culture. I like folk music. I'm not ahead of it, right? So like I know Woody Guthrie, but I don't know Woody Guthrie. I know if you cover a Woody Guthrie song,
Yeah.
and Ani DeFranco did "Which Side Are You On?" Sharon Jones like really funked up "This Land Is Your Land." Like
Yeah, yeah. I
that's
love that
that's
version.
yeah, that's what I know.
Hmm.
But J Lo comes up and sings This Land Is Your Land,"
Hmm.
and I'm looking at your Twitter timeline, and it's just a simple sentence. Okay, but this land isn't your land,
Right.
and I'm like, man, like I said earlier, like you just make me think.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not right. I was wondering who she was singing that to. Um, Number one, I think it was a really interesting song choice. Uh, like just because, like, I think, I sorry. Wow, I forgot Lady Gaga. I was like, who is that? Who's that person? Lady Gaga sings Amazing Grace. Oh no, no, no,
Yeah,
no. No, she sang oh darn it. Sorry, man. I'm blanking. What did she sang the national anthem.
okay,
Um
yeah.
I think. And then
So
Garth Brooks sang Amazing Grace. And Garth Brooks sang, I think he missed actually the best verse, which was the second verse, which is like, Grace will lead me home. That's kind of like,
yeah,
I was like, man, he sang like the first and like fourth verse or something like that. Anyway, I'm nerding out on verses here, but,
songwriter.
but J Lo sings "This Land Is Your Land," and I'm like, that's a colonizer song if there ever was a song. Rebecca Nagel, who's a member of Cherokee Nation. She wrote an NPR. She did an article on NPR, and she said, "quote I mostly experienced the inauguration on Twitter. It was like I was living in two worlds, where my non-native Twitter was talking about how great JLo is, and she is, and then native Twitter was like, seriously, this land is your land is how we're going to celebrate today."
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the song is a perfect example of ongoing settler colonialism and indigenous erasure, right? And
Yeah,
like we're talking about ideas, systems that perpetuate genocide and repression of people and culture. So when you sing that song, you're acting like they're not here. Um, and you're acting like it's completely normal to be singing this song, right? Of course it's our land. No, it's not.
Yeah.
So it's a larger, and again, that's what I'm saying. Like the 20th was a perfect example in some ways, or the 6th was a perfect example of the U.S. in many ways, and also the 20th was a perfect example where people think, this finally, like we've reached this point, and then you sing that song, and you're like, right, this is another
Yeah.
reminder that we still don't get it, and we've got a long ways to go. So yeah, I mean, you know, great, great melody, um, but the U.S. is a country that's built on settler colonialism. There's some native writers out there who have redone the song "This Land Is Native Land." I wish I could remember that. Kat Jefferson, I think, is so. Shout out to Kat Jefferson. I doubt she'll hear
Okay.
this, but she wrote "This Land." This land is native land, and she goes through and acknowledges the various people uh, whose land it actually belongs to. It's a
Hmm.
beautiful song. So
So you wrote this one sentence tweet, and then you quote tweet Joseph M. Pierce, who says, "This land was not made for you and me. It was stolen by white people." And then you wrote, "I appreciate these calls for unity, but without justice and accountability, we will continue to spiral into chaos."
mhm.
And then you wrote, "I wish more spiritual leaders understood this." And then you wrote,
Man, I was active on Twitter, man. Just
oh,
exposing my tweets.
it was one of those days.
Yeah, it was.
And then you wrote, "Amanda Gorman," all caps.
Hmm.
And then you wrote, "I know that there was some serious disinfecting work done in the nation's capital, but did anyone consider a smudging ceremony?" I'm so thankful for the pause. And, it well, you said like the 20th and like this, yeah, this reminder of erasure. From my context, say, um, listening to, black artists and, African American artists and poets. One of my favorites, Propaganda,
Hmm.
has a poem called 20 Years, and it's an allegory about a couple that's been married for 40. And for the first 20 years, he was horrifically abusive.
Mm.
And then in the last 20 years, he hasn't done it, but he does not recognize how the scars remain.
Wow.
And so their relationship doesn't improve, but he can't understand why.
Right. Right. Hmm. Hmm.
And Prop ends the poem by saying, whatever, happy 4th of July, hope you enjoy your ribs. Like it is
Right.
this,
Exactly.
yeah, this the pain that cannot be forgotten. And at the very least, the pain's not actively being inflicted, but in a lot of our cultural discourse, we're debating the pain
Right.
in ways that just is mind-boggling. Maybe I'll ask about your story because I mean you've talked a little bit about learning and sort of not being raised as connected to your own culture. What Tell me a little bit about your journey in sort of coming to an understanding, coming to a physical connection, so much so that you would again, in your honesty, share these poignant things with us.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, John. Yeah. Um, like I want to speak about this respectfully, and like I want to honor my ancestors and the people that come before me and whose shoulders I stand upon. So my mother, who's Cherokee, was adopted by my white-bodied grandparents, and I say white-bodied. Shout out to Resma Menikin, who wrote the book "My Grandmother's Hands," and he uses that
Hmm.
term, which I think is really helpful. And adopted my mother, who's Cherokee, and had my mom has no connection to her. her Cherokee heritage, no connection to her mother. And we're working right now to try to reconnect. So my brother and I grew up as Native kids, as NDNs for short, as Native boys. Um, but we grew up in white-bodied evangelicalism, like church construct, a church culture that, if if the United States on January 20th isn't acknowledging Indigenous people, the evangelical church 30, 40
Right.
years ago surely ain't doing it. It's all connected, of course. I remember going to my brother's sports games, and every time he scored a basket playing basketball, they would his classmates would do the tomahawk chop, right? Like that
Wow.
was like, that was like the most. And I would kind of look around and think, oh, like they're happy for my brother, they're like honoring my brother, and like I would get excited, and then growing up, I would hear slurs at my mom, like a little squaw, or making notes about her appearance, about her body. She's 5 foot long, dark, beautiful hair, dark skin. Just always commenting on her body and the way she looked, and she was different, and she grew up in a very white context too. And so then, and for us never really having that connection to where my mother was from, you kind of you grow up assimilating, but all the while,
Right.
kind of having this ambiguity about who you are and where you're from, and feeling things in your body, while at the same time growing up in a church culture that was like, kind of told you that you just need to think the right things or believe the right things, but all the while you're like, I inhabit this tan body that doesn't look like everyone else here. My mom doesn't look like everyone else. My brother doesn't look like everyone else. Yeah. So I kind of lived the first 20, I feel like 25, 30 years of my life, just with a lot of questions.
Right.
Just like, where am I coming from? Who am I? And it's fast forward to Reimagine, 2019.
Yeah. Fall 2019.
It's fall 2019. And there was a space dedicated to BIPOC folks. I
Hmm.
remember one of the breakouts, and I didn't go to it because I didn't feel like I kind of belonged in it.
Me too.
Okay,
I did the same thing.
for real?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, all right. We need to talk about that, John. We need to talk about that. I don't know if that's now, or I don't know if that's another podcast.
it it could
Okay,
be
so
now.
okay, so talk to me about what were you feeling? Why didn't you go?
Why didn't I go? I mean, so my story is a little documented just in terms of
Yeah, I imagine.
on record.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, like my mom is Canadian born. The long tradition of Mennonite heritage, right? Heavily European, German, Swiss, American as well, which I don't think about too much. But my grandma was American. My dad is immigrant from Guyana, dark skinned, and the same like connection. I don't have a connection to Guyanese heritage. My dad tried to maintain his connection, but for some reason did not conceive that I would want any of this stuff. Like
Mm,
there was no like I'm not there was no effort to pass this stuff down. It could be narcissism. It could like he was a very broken person. So there's lots to get into there,
hmm
but it just in terms of like you said, your body and your environment are very different.
hmm
And so that put me actually at odds with a lot of black folks growing up. And when you're young and formative and you have a number of those experiences, then your brain is going to want to protect you from continuing to have those experiences.
mm,
So code switching wasn't a thing until I sort of acknowledged my own blackness, but it didn't happen until I was about 20 or so, and I saw Lawrence Hill. Um, I saw the writer Lawrence Hill. He wrote a book about being mixed as a Canadian. And I was like, who is this guy? And why is he writing, a large part of my story? And so I had to acknowledge my own blackness and then go on a learning journey. And then I was like, okay, well, then now I'm like, can code switch a bit. And there's lots of folks that would tell me, even like some in our reimagined spaces that were like, you are black to me. And I'm like, that's cool because I've never felt that way.
Right.
I actually have like, what are you supposed to do when your dad wants A, nothing to do with you, and B, does not want to pass down any of this culture that is going to be your signifier for the rest of your life, but because of how much race is a social construct and categorizes us. And so I have to have some explanation for this skin. But on the flip side, I have like generations of European bodied people that love me. They don't know what to do with my difference, but they love me.
But they love you. Yeah.
Yeah.
What to do with you? Oh man. Wow. Thank you for that, Jon. There's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot. And so I just, I don't want to read all of myself into your story, but I think that we do have some similarities when it comes to, like I can check this box and I can sit in this room, but I don't know how comfortable I'm going to be in it.
Right. Yeah. So like somebody I was hanging out with, I think I was hanging out basically with all the black people in one of the rooms at Reimagine, like while something else was happening in the space, in the like conference space. And I was just hanging out chatting with everyone, and our friend Rose Ingrid again says like, all right, let's go back inside when our friend Heather gets up to do her spoken word piece. And so shout out to Heather Beamish.
Shout out to Heather Beamish.
Wow. Heather. So we all decided to go in, and Rose Ingrid and I have talked about this story, and so I feel like she'd be comfortable with me saying this, but she was like, okay, I'll go in with Chad. I'll go in with the white guy. And
Ooh, okay.
I looked at Rose Ingrid. I said, oh, I'm not white. And she goes, what? And I said, yeah. I said, Rose, I was like, this is a long story. We were like walking.
You're just trying to walk in the room.
We were trying to walk through the door, and she like, and she's like such a loving, honest, caring person. She was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't know. And I'm like, it was like, I was like, listen, this is a lot. I don't know where I belong. And that's all I'm going to tell you right now. And she was like, oh my gosh, like, why didn't you come to the BIPOC space? And I was like, this is exactly why.
Yeah. It's not a safe space.
I'm like, I don't know. So, and then, and then just fast forward that year, like there were just various experiences I had, as well as just kind of, I feel like in a lot of ways coming home to my own body of like, what is it I'm really feeling, and like my place in this world. And then like you get educating yourself on like Native American erasure and like Indigenous erasure, and like this is settler colonialism is ongoing. And you start thinking about this own sense of erasure in your own spirit and in your own body that you have felt your entire life. And you realize this is a systemic issue, but it's also affecting me on a cellular, on a personal, family dynamic. So like, what does it mean for me to assert myself as who I believe I actually am? And that's tricky, like you, when you're like, I don't have that cultural connection. I live in this body, but I don't practice these things. I don't have, these rituals. I don't maybe know the songs, um, but I know that I feel things. And I know that
Right.
when I do certain things, it feels right. Um, so yeah, so I'm not sure where we're at in this conversation besides that.
So, where did you start?
um, I I took a workshop on, well, I think first of all, I first of all I chatted with a sister who lives in Montreal. Her name is Lisa, and she's like a parental figure. She also spoke at that conference, and she has Cherokee roots. And I spoke to her over the phone, just kind of sharing with her like everything we've kind of talked about just now. And she looked at me and just said, "Chad, like I see you, and I just want you to know, like it's okay. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to like just be exactly where you're at." And I didn't know that I needed someone who looked like me
Hmm.
and occupied that parental space, who was not my parent, to say it's okay to feel what you're feeling. And I just lost it. Like I broke down. I was sobbing in front of her. Right? And it was the first time we like we had had a beer before, but like I'm crying on the phone with her, and I felt like that moment was like, it was just like a switch went off. It was like I just came home to like, this is in
Hmm.
me. This is in me. And I got to give attention to this. And I didn't realize that I needed someone, an elder, to
Yeah.
tell me like, I see you and you belong. Um, and so from that point on, I just, I was honest with Jen, and she's been like massively supportive just about kind of this whole process. And she said to me, you know, Chad, ever since we've met, you know, we've been married for 7 going on 8 years now. Like ever since we met, like I've known this is a thing for you, you know? And
Hmm.
like when we first met, you know, she's not proud of the question, but she asked me like, what are you?
Right.
You know, which has been a common question my whole life. What are you? Are you
Yeah.
Mexican? Are you from Hawaii? Are you Greek? Are you like, I went to Guatemala, played soccer one time, and I like spoke some Spanish, and I think they thought I like was one of them.
Right.
I'm like, no, 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 I'm not an imposter. Like I only know a little Spanish. And so,
I get that when I go to the Dominican. Be
right.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think just, yeah. And then, so I started doing some rituals that are, you know, true to Indigenous people. I've started doing smudging, which is a cleansing ritual, cleansing practice. Maybe if you're listening to this, I've seen it or participated in it. It's a lot of times that it's communal, but
Hmm.
we haven't had that opportunity much in the pandemic, so it's become a lot more personal for me. So that's been a very important like prayer practice for me, um, as well as just trying to talk about this more often. Like the more you're able to just be honest about your story and your grief and your struggle, I feel like the more you're just kind of breathing those sighs of like, your body's just saying thank you for giving permission to like to feel, um and to be what's always been. Yeah, and I've had great folks in community near and far who have been remarkably supportive, as well as just educating myself, reading books, and engaging with ongoing Indigenous issues. Right. So whether that's the Dakota Access Pipeline, you
Hmm.
know, and promoting Indigenous artists, you know, ongoing ways in which our education system is still immersed in white-bodied supremacy, and also like just trying to help my kids, at least with Julie right now, just trying to help her be connected in little ways to the land around her and ongoing land acknowledgments. So, waking up every morning and just recognizing that I'm a settler on this land. This isn't, I'm
Yeah.
not from here. This land belongs to a people. Um, and they're still here. And so what are we doing to, what are we doing as a society to ensure that, uh, things are given back to them and their rights are restored? So it's complicated, but I feel like I'm never not learning and growing and changing right now.
That's real. I caught like when you talked about smudging. Um, it's interesting. The teaching board that I work in, has had several days of education where and have worked to forge relationships with local elders to come in to first teach the teachers, which is actually the might be the hardest part.
Mm,
Um, and that's an ongoing as a person of color in a board where I am very much a minority. It's an ongoing issue.
okay. Yeah.
But then as a person of color sitting at the feet of Indigenous elders, it's so I'm very it's been that's been a wonderful experience.
Mm,
So all that to say is that like we've been able to participate in some smudging ceremonies. Um, I wondered about for you, has there been a shift in your self perception in engaging this material? Now, like I mean, I guess
right.
the common word would be imposter, but I don't know if that's effective enough to lay on you. It's just more about like your self perception versus, where, your first, you know, 30 years, like you said, of rearing. Like
Yeah.
it takes time, but, what's that been like? Have you seen a shift?
Yeah, I have. I said to a friend probably 6 months ago, and there's been so much that's shifted, I kind of feel like internally. That I said, I think where I was 6 months ago was that I still felt like I had to assert myself as like native. Like I'd have to tell people that I'm native. Like it was like I was really self-conscious about it, right? Like even walking into, we have a store in town where a native store where I buy supplies. And they I got into a conversation with them because they looked at me and they're like, where are you from? And so I launched into kind of my whole story, like where I was from, and
Mm-hmm.
it kind of turned into a whole thing. But I remember the first time I walked in the store to buy some materials, and I felt like, oh my God, what am I doing? Who
Yeah.
is this person? I've never done this. So I definitely felt like an imposter. And like I had to ask questions like, okay, I'm smudging, here's kind of who I am and where I come from. I'm really new to all of this, yet at the same time, I'm really wanting to do some like reclaiming for myself.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I have felt like an imposter. A phrase that's tossed around on native Twitter a lot is a pretendian, which is like someone who
Hmm.
claims they have native heritage. There was a whole issue on the CBC recently about a show that was produced, but I guess one of the main characters was not native, but there was a lot of native people who were also on the cast, but they ended up canceling the show because the one person who was like a prominent figure was not native. Anyway, it's a whole thing, but that also plays into, that's also an ongoing indigenous issue, is a lot of people who claim they have heritage or roots and actually don't.
Sure.
And so that plays into kind of where I'm coming from too. It's like, well, I know it. Like I know it's in me. I know it's where we're from, but like I don't have these practices. I'm not a part of this culture, but yet this is the body I inhabit. So in many ways I have felt like a pretendian. And so I engage these practices like smudging and even just activism because I don't have I don't have much else right now. And when I engage those things, I feel like I'm being very actually true to me. A friend asked me, like, when you started smudging, did you feel like it's what you've always been doing or what you've always been needing to do? And I said,
Mm-hmm.
that's exactly right. It's a great way of putting it.
Hmm.
So when I started engaging with it, using the resources of the land, natural resources to help you cleanse negativity from yourself and the place that you're in, the place that you inhabit. That all felt very natural and holistic to me and made a lot of sense in my being. So so I think for a while I'm going to be in this space of, am I home? Well, I'm getting there. So,
Yeah.
and that's part of it. It's just I got to keep walking. So,
Yeah. There's, I really, I really resonate with that, and that this is, yeah, it's a journey,
hmm
and you're gonna keep walking.
yeah, because there's also, like, I know people too who are native, and then you also get into the issue of blood quantum, which is like how native, like how much blood is
Sure.
in you, which is a
Yeah.
colonizing question to begin with, which is like, okay, what percentage? Oh, well, you're not like that native, right? It's
Yeah.
like, excuse me? That was kind of a way to track people and understand culture as well as like keep tabs. Yeah, it's complicated. But you have to keep walking because there's a lot of people too that I think inhabit these bodies and maybe aren't connected. And it's just part of it, it's so systemic, like trying to get answers to where you come from, right? Like trying to understand who you are. That's a lot of work. Like if you don't, and if there's nobody in your family that's also committed to that process with you, that's a very lonely journey. Um,
Right.
and so, but for me, Indigenous mindset around ancestors, which is like I'm a part of a generation, right? And what am I passing along? Well, I have to leave. I'm trying to fill in some of the story that's missing. And I'm trying to do that not only on a information level, not only factual level, but also in my body. So like whatever data that's stored in my body, like I want my kids to look at me and say, Dad's done the work to come
Hmm.
home to who he really is. Because I hopefully want to help them do that. And if I don't do the work, I surely can't help them do it. So for me, it's very personal. It comes back to the honesty stuff, right? Um, Integrity. Who are you? Yeah, yeah. Thanks for listening, John.
Chad, like I said, I really honor you sharing your story. Thank you for continuing to speak uh, clearly in ways that give us pause, that are going to drive us towards learning. I know you because I know my experience. This is going to be hard for you to hear, but I would like people to follow you, to be able to learn as you journey. I know that you are the type of person that will point people to the people you are learning from as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it's necessary in both the country that we live in, your country of origin, that that non-indigenous people take the time to sit in a posture of learning, and to add to the voices that they're listening to. And it will be uncomfortable, um, but necessary. And so you can certainly, take people and point them in all the directions of the people that are smarter than you or more connected than you. And I do the exact same thing as a black man.
Mm-hmm.
George Floyd died, or George Floyd was murdered, and then all of a sudden people in my community remembered that I was black.
Right.
Um,
Right.
uh, but
Right.
I do think that um, that we have God-given perspectives and voices that are inclusive and necessary in this time for the people that we connect with. So
For sure.
You've been an important voice to me, and pointing me in some places and giving me pause and making me continue to think and learn. And so I would like people to be able to engage your voice. I know you've started doing a bit of writing on Substack.
Yeah, a little bit, not as much as I'd like to be, but there's a few things. There's a few things there.
You got a couple of kids that gets some,
I got
some time.
I got a couple of kids. Yeah, I'm on Substack. I don't even know what my handle is, man. What the heck is my handle? Is it well, you can follow me on Twitter at brother Cecil _ Instagram.
You are Chad Cecil at Substack or Chad Cecil .substack.
Hey, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Thank you, Substack. Yeah, give me a follow. I'd love to connect with you too. Whoever you are, whoever's listening, chat, connect, follow, share things, learn together.
Thanks, my brother.
Thank you, Johnny C.